And I find that our colleagues and our employees will likely move along with the change more readily if they see that people like them in their roles, people that they respect who aren't necessarily titled leaders, but who are influencers within a department or a team, are the ones who are going to help accelerate your change.
So if you're a leader in an organization, you're probably experiencing a lot of changes right now, but so are your employees. And right now, your employees are fearing that change. And you as a leader, you can't rely on just systems and processes because change is all about your people. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk to the leaders about what can you do to help solve that fear, to help with that resistance to change in the workplace, and to help you manage not just the change as a process, but change as a human experience within the workplace. Hi, I'm Dr. Delos with Work Psychology, and I will be your host today, Dr. Danielle Lombard-Sims, and CEO of Talentergy.
It's been a tough year for Juan.
I had cancer.
Cancer that required expensive treatments. Juan's mother turned to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, where no family ever pay us for anything, so parents can focus on what is important.
Like buying me a present.
Like buying you a present and giving you a future.
Give thanks for the healthy kids in your life and give to those who are not. Go to stjude.org or shop wherever you see the St. Jude logo.
Live from Studio 67, this is Workplace Psychology with Dr. Delos, where we explore the psychology of work, well-being, and everything in between. I'm your host, Dr. Danielle Lombard-Sims, CEO of Talentergy and an industrial organizational psychologist. You know, in today's world, organizations are experiencing a lot of change. And during times of rapid change, leaders oftentimes rely on process. But change isn't just about process, it's about your people. And when people fear change, they turn to their leaders because process doesn't alleviate fear. Leaders do. Leaders can either be the glue that holds that team together or the wedge that drives that team apart. Here joining us today to talk about what leaders can do and solutions in today's workplace is Erin Perry, Vice President and Talent Management of Total Rewards.
Thank you, Danielle, for having me.
Thank you, Erin, for joining.
Great to see you.
So let me tell the guests a little bit more about you. Erin Perry, as I mentioned, is the Vice President of Talent Management and Total Rewards at St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Ms. Perry is a seasoned talent and organizational development executive with nearly 2 decades of experience shaping workforce culture across major systems. She currently leads teams responsible for benefits, compensation, talent acquisition, leadership development, and organizational effectiveness. Previously with LCMC Health and Ochsner Health, Ms. Perry has led major culture, DEI, and workforce development initiatives. She also serves as an adjunct faculty at Tulane University. Erin, you are busy.
I am.
Very busy. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today and for sharing your experiences with our leaders.
Absolutely.
So Erin, my first question for you, what I want to ask is really based on all of that experience we just heard, what have you seen in terms of what leaders do that are successful during times of change? And what do leaders do that maybe cause more resistance and more fear in their employees?
Yes, so I think one thing is mindset. So coming into a change with an open mind, even if it seems to be an unfavorable change, being curious, and your employees will see that. And so nobody wants to follow a leader who's acting like Chicken Little, like the sky is falling. So if you can keep your composure and remain open, that certainly can make a change more successful. I think the second thing is knowing when, as a leader, you're able to influence the change in terms of perhaps the change itself or the timeline of the change, and knowing when your role is really just to execute and to lean into it and do it. I think that those are very different roles to play, and being aware and cognizant of what type of change it is and what role and influence you may have is also very important in whether it's successful or not.
Erin, you said something that I want to dive deep into, and you said sometimes your role is to execute. You know, as leaders, and I've worked in corporate America for 29 years, we are both leaders. Sometimes there are changes in an organization. You may not have had a say in the change, or you may not even necessarily agree with it at the time that the change is happening, but it is our responsibility to execute that change effectively. What advice do you have for leaders that may not understand the change themselves so that they can be good role models for their employees around change?
Being vulnerable and acknowledging what you know and don't know and what you can and cannot share. I know as leaders there are certain things that we're privy to that we simply can't share at a certain point in a change, and so being mindful of that, not criticizing senior management, especially if it wasn't a change that you had a voice in or a role in, but being as open as you can and sticking to the facts and trying to avoid coloring it with opinion or with feeling. Here's what we know, here's what we don't, and here's how we're going to get through this together. It certainly helps.
I love it. You know, sometimes as leaders, I think we have to know all the answers, and when we don't, we make it up, or we might be part of that resistance. So I love that you said, you know, find the answers to those questions that you might have. Don't speak negatively about the change. Don't say anything that you might have to regret or take back. Learn what you can and execute on your responsibilities as it relates to change. You know, I will say one of the things that I experienced, especially during COVID, when I was a chief HR officer at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, COVID hit and we were ill-prepared, just ill-prepared. But yet, we got together and we got it done. What do you think happens in times of change when teams really rally around the why behind the change? How does that change the dynamic of teams aligning with change?
Because they know they have urgency and meaning around it. And I think the why is one of the most crucial pieces to define around any change. Why do we need to change the current state? And what is the compelling force behind that? And if you don't have a compelling why, you need to find one, because nobody is going to want to implement a change where it's unclear why it's happening, who it's impacting, and sort of the scope of that change. So I think that COVID, unfortunately, was a very compelling reason to change. And it gave some opportunity, and that's another area kind of leaning into the opportunities that change presents, because all the old rules sort of fell away and you had to move together into an unknown space. And so there is some opportunity and freedom in that we wouldn't have had we, not had that event happen.
Yes. And you're so right. And I think what we learned is change itself isn't what people resist. It's not understanding the why. I loved your response because you said it's because everybody understood the why. Oftentimes we start with what, which is the process or the systems. We start with what's changing. We even go into how it's going to change, but we forget, why are we doing this in the first place? What are some things that leaders can do to make sure that they're always remembering to start with why?
They themselves need to have a good sense of why. So if that means asking questions, if that means getting clarity around parts that you can communicate to your team, that's an important first step, and being able to describe it in a way that's compelling. So even if it's not necessarily perceived as a favorable change, what could the advantages of future state be if we implement this change? And really focusing on that and being the storyteller of the change to help move people along with that why really is a helpful and can make the difference between a successful change and an unsuccessful one.
Well, this is awesome, because I have to tell you, a lot of times, and again, having worked in organizations, we often talk about what in process, we don't talk about the why, and the why gets to the human side of change. And so when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Erin, who's going to continue to provide us with great solutions that our leaders can implement during times of change.
I know where I've been, makes me feel like it's me paying respects to all those who have come before me.
I am the greatest by Cassius Clay.
My fellow citizens, today we celebrate the mystery of American renewal.
And now here he is, the famous Yankee Clipper himself, Joltin' Joe DiMaggio.
Life has taught me to just try and be the best that I can be, and I thank the Academy for saying to me that on this given night, I was the best that I could be.
Each year, the Red Cross responds to 66,000 disasters.
Most of them are home fires.
Most of them are home fires.
Ooh.
I know. Whoa.
7 people die each day, on average, from home fires.
7 people a day.
That's way too many people.
You can save your life and your family's life.
Make an escape plan.
Make an escape plan.
Make an escape plan.
It's critical that everyone can get out in under 2 minutes.
I can get from my bedroom to my front door in less than 2 minutes.
In 2 minutes.
I can take my shirt off, pour glitter all over myself, and still do it in 2 minutes.
Called my mom the other day, told her I did it in under 2 minutes. She was so proud.
1.5.
What? There's no way.
Yeah. Make sure to visit redcross.org/2steps, 2 minutes.
2 steps.
2 minutes.
Whether you're a workplace supervisor, manager, team leader, corporate executive, or simply a well-respected, influential employee with proven leadership abilities, Workplace Psychology with Dr. Danielle Lombard-Sims is the one show you don't want to miss. Effective, transformative, productive leadership isn't just procedural, it's also personal. Learn, apply, and enhance workplace leadership skills and abilities simply by tuning into or subscribing to Workplace Psychology with Dr. Danielle Lombard-Sims.
So Erin, I love what you said about being present. You know, oftentimes, especially as leaders, we may have a gazillion meetings in a day, but being present during times of change, your employees need to see you. And I also love what you said about active listening, because oftentimes what we do is we do passive listening where we're just listening until you're done and then we already know what we're going to say. But active listening really implies empathy. It implies putting yourself in that person's shoes, allowing the employees an opportunity to really speak to, you know, what's concerning them. The other thing that you said, which I think is so important and most leaders probably shy away from, is bring them to the table. If you've got people that are resistant, invite them in, hear what their resistance are. I'll tell you, one of the things that I did, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts around this, I made some of those people change champions. Because I thought, you know what, if you're resistant and I influenced you to change, maybe then they'll look at you as the resistor and say, oh wow, they got around it. Have you used change champions or anything like that in your organization to help move change along?
Absolutely, and I find that our colleagues and our employees will likely move along with the change more readily if they see that people like them in their roles, people that they respect who aren't necessarily titled leaders, but who are influencers within a department or a team, are the ones who are going to help accelerate your change and move that along a whole lot quicker. So absolutely, having a network of change champions, whether it be leaders or preferably staff members who can really advocate for the change, who can speak to it, and who can, in those sort of off-stage conversations that happen between your employees when you're not present, they can help socialize the change and help bring up their colleagues along.
Yes, and you know, a lot of times in change management, we talk about your key stakeholders. Everyone thinks up. But your key stakeholders are your employees as well. And so getting them along the ride with the change, even if they may not understand the complete why yet, because as you said, sometimes as leaders, we can't always divulge everything yet. I know I used to be over acquisitions and we couldn't say anything. Everything was confidential until it was actually going to happen. And so, you know, doing what you can during those times, it matters. It matters. You know, I'm going to step back a bit because a lot of what I'm hearing you talk about is actually about trust. And that change requires trust. So I'm going to throw a little bit of a different question at you now. We're going to change it a little bit. What might leaders do to really enhance trust? Because I think based on this conversation, what I'm hearing is that's really the foundation for getting your change initiatives successfully through your employees.
It is, and it's about relationships, and it requires time. So to build trust, it's going to have to be started well in advance of a change, and it's going to have to be built over time, and you're going to have to, as a leader, really invest effort into building relationships. And that means knowing about your employees at work, but also knowing enough about them personally. What does bring them fear? What does give them some anxiety about what's going on at work? And that requires you to ask questions and get to know people beyond surface level. So trust building is foundational, and it's going to help accelerate your change if you've invested that time with your colleagues and your employees.
I love that. You know, I think in this technology world, everything's moving at the speed of light. We've got AI that's helping us make decisions faster. We forget to take the time to get to know people and understand people. I remember 29 years ago, my first leadership role, and I just bought a house, and then I heard we were going to be acquired. My mind was racing, and my new boss, who had never met me, called me on my phone as I was going home and said, I just want you to know you're safe. I didn't even know what that meant, but in that moment, oh my gosh, that meant so much. And so then building the relationship over time, the trust happened over time. Actions speak louder than words. We always say, that say-do ratio. If you say and do what you say you're going to do, people will trust you. So I love what you just shared with our audience, because I do think trust is the very foundation, and getting to know the people, not just as employees and workers, but as people, matters. So I want to go back to your experiences with change, because you've got so many years of experience, and I really want our audience to learn from you. Can you think of an example of a change initiative that either you led or another leader led that went really well, and what do you think led to that success of that change?
It was at a prior organization. We had a restructure, and it could have been very disruptive to my team. We were moving to another division, another building, and reporting to a brand new leader. And so my team had a lot of angst about that. And I think what made that change successful was I wasn't Chicken Little. I didn't know all the answers to their questions, but was really honest about what I did and didn't know. I was vulnerable and admitted that, I had concerns too. I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but what I did commit to them was keeping them as up to date and in the loop as I could. And that worked very well. And I think that being open to the change, despite my own private questions about it, was really one of the things that helped make that successful. And then helping them along in being visible and accessible, and just literally being present in the office for them to stop in when and if they had questions or just wanted to talk about what was going on.
Good. One of the things I experienced with change is some people are early adopters. Some people are going to be resistors, and then some people are on the fence. They're like, I'm not quite sure if I'm there yet or if I'm not there yet. I usually tell my leaders, focus on the ones that are in that middle, because you're not necessarily going to get all your resistors to come over. Your early adopters are already on board. So what advice would you have for that middle group? What are some of the things that maybe leaders can do when they have that person, they understand, but they're still just not quite there? What might be some ways to get them there?
Leverage relationships. So take the time to analyze who are the people who they listen to, these people who are in the middle. Whose voices do they hear and do they respect? And hopefully you can bring some of those people along so that they in turn can bring the people who are a little bit in the middle. And again, relationships are not always the first thing you think about when you think about a successful change, but it really is. And it's the time that you've invested in building them and developing trust. And so if people are on the fence, your own leadership style can also influence whether they come to be an advocate or not, because if they trust you and believe that you have the best intention for the team and the organization, they are more likely to come along with the change than not.
Yes, I love that. This is such a great conversation. We are going to come back and complete our conversation with Erin Perry, talking again about leadership change and what we can do in the organization. We'll see you back after these short messages.
Thank you for tuning in. Mondays for the Let's Talk 901 series, kicking off at 6:30 p.m. right here on Xfinity Channel 17 and 1091. Let's Talk 901 series is filmed live at Metro 67 in the beautiful downtown Memphis. Stay tuned next for more Let's Talk 901, produced by Lamarr Productions.
Thank you for tuning in for Workplace Psychology with Dr. Danielle Lombard-Sims on Mondays at 6:30. The focus for this program is to understand workplace psychology theory. Consider these key points. Focuses on the behavior and mental processes of individuals in a work environment. Aims to enhance employee well-being and productivity through psychological principles. Examines factors like motivation, job satisfaction, and organizational culture. Utilizes research methods to assess workplace dynamics and employee performance. Applies theories such as Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Hertzberg's two-factor theory. Encourages effective communication and conflict resolution strategies within teams. Now, back to workplace psychology with Dr. Danielle Lombard-Sims.
So welcome back to Workplace Psychology with Dr. DeLose. We're here with our special guest, Erin Perry, Vice President of Talent Management and Total Rewards at St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. So Erin, before we went on break, we were talking a lot about trust and authenticity and presence. And in a city like Memphis, where authenticity matters, what can you tell us about, just leaders in Memphis in general? Obviously, you work at St. Jude, and that's a very mission-driven hospital. But what about leaders in general that might work in different industries? Are there any different tips that they should use, or would these similar tips work in their industries as well?
Similar tips. I really do think Memphis is very much a relationship-based town. It's a small, big city, and so people know each other inside and outside of work. And so I think demonstrating that you are committed to the mission of your organization, building those relationships, demonstrating that you're invested in the community. And I think that's another important aspect of this work. We don't exist in isolation as an organization, and so what are we doing to help lift up our community as well is very important for leaders, whether they're in Memphis or not.
I love that. And I also love what you just said too about lifting up the community. Again, when we think about the workplace, yes, it's where we work, but these are also it's our community. The people in our community are usually the same people that we work with. So, really thinking of it that way, that brings in the relationship. That's the relational side of leadership and change. This isn't just an employee. This is my community. I love that. I love that you brought that in there. So with that, just like in families, we fight, families have disagreements. So when leaders are misaligned around change, that can definitely draw confusion for the employees. So what do you recommend we do when leaders are misaligned around the changes that are going on in the hospital?
First of all, we need to address it. Absolutely. Don't let it fester. We know when things are not aligned, and we know when things are starting to go askew. So making sure that we do take the time to realign and not just drive forward. Making sure we are all speaking from the same communication plan and that we have the same bullets and key points that we're sharing with all of our employees, because nothing will create confusion as much as different leaders communicating different things to their employees, and also being mindful of sequencing of messaging, because there are certainly times when as leaders there are things we can't and should not be communicating yet to our employees. So making sure that everybody on the leadership team knows what the timeline is, knows what the plan points are is really important. So taking the time to really map out a communication plan and taking the time to go through that communication plan together is very important.
I love that you brought that up. I started the segment by saying it's not just about the process, it's about the people, but there still needs to be a process. You don't negate the process. So you mentioned the importance of communication and sequencing and timelines regarding communication. Because if you say too much, it could cause fear, but if you don't say enough, it can still cause fear. Absolutely. So from your perspective, when you're dealing with change management, what are a few of those tips? You mentioned communication. What other processes should leaders be thinking about?
Well, there's first of all, no hard and fast script for a successful change effort. So I think some of it is contextual, and you need to know your own employees and your own team, and that will give you insight into when and how to communicate about change. So really, certainly there are lots of resources that I can mention at the end of our segment, but really knowing your own audience first and foremost. I think that, again, going back to some of the previous tips, listening, making an effort as the change is being implemented to have whether it be town halls or road shows where you're just making yourself available to answer questions. And it may be that you don't have answers to all the questions, and that's okay, but you are being visible and you are trying to invite others into the process. And so making that opportunity available to your colleagues and your employees is very important. And again, I think the tools for resisting change. So certainly knowing who those people are, doing a stakeholder analysis, looking at different populations and how they're going to be impacted, and being able to speak to the impact on different groups, I think is also very important, because that's the first thing that anyone's going to think of when a change is happening is, how is this going to impact me? So being able to address that in some way is going to hopefully alleviate some anxiety, even if you can't share everything that you know.
Yes. I love that you brought in the impact, because you're absolutely right. What's in it for me matters. That is what everybody wants to know. So Erin, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing all of your wonderful insights with our leaders. I know that they gained a lot from this. And for all the people that are watching, I hope you took away the valued experiences that Erin shared with us today about active listening, building relationships, building trust, being present, your tone, your behavior, it matters. So please join us next time, for we will have as a guest Camelia Smith, CEO of Renewed Outlook, and she's going to talk to us about grief as an organizational phenomenon. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope to see you again next week.
If I get a text, I'll look at my phone.
It's definitely texting.
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.
Snapchat. I do Snapchat and drive sometimes.
Is that like making Snapchats or watching them?
Making them.
Texting is like my main form of communication.
Boredom, honestly.
And B, I guess no, it's really just A.
I've only never done it at stoplights. I've always been really good about it.
The passenger has a pretty important role driving now, where they're like, oh, red light, red light.
If someone that you like texts you, you can't just let it sit there without just knowing what they said.
Because what if something exciting's happening or something happened?
Like every time I do it, I think about, I'm like, why am I doing this? And then I just keep doing it.
So I'd like to, want to introduce you to a friend of ours.
My name is JC.
Hi, Alexis.
Hi, Dash.
Justin, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. I just really quickly want to have a chat, tell you what happened to me. When I was 21 years old, driving home from my college graduation ceremony, driver on his phone was so distracted, he turned left into the intersection at a red light. Another car, an 18-wheeler, swerved to miss him and hit my family's car. And the resulting collision actually killed both of my parents. I spent 2 months in the hospital fighting for my own life, and then 2 more months in a rehab hospital, learning how to walk again, learning how to speak again, learning how to dress myself and how to feed myself. I live with a partially paralyzed body. I didn't have my daddy to walk me down the aisle when I got married.
Having sort of met JC, because you look at JC and sort of give those same reasons.
Usually I use my phone to change a song on. I try to use it as little as possible, but
I'm not gonna look at my phone ever again.
Honestly, if I have been sitting at a red light, I'll glance down to see if my mom's texting me, but the people's lives that are impacted from something that is so stupid.
I can assure you on my drive home right now, I'm not going to use my phone and drive, and I'm not going to do it when I go to work tomorrow and the next day after that until, it becomes a habit, and that just doesn't happen at all.
I know this is hard. I'm sorry. It's hard for me too, but this is real. You have the power to really actually make a difference and do something about it.
Thank you.
Hello, and thanks for tuning in to the Let's Talk 901 series on Mondays, starting at 6:30 p.m. until 8 o'clock p.m. Next up at 7 o'clock is Let's Talk 901 with Betty Lamarr. Betty talks about all things 901, including top doctors, business leaders, and people just like you doing what you do to uplift the city of Memphis. 7:30 p.m., the Medical Class 901 with Dr. Chi, renowned infectious diseases specialist in the Mid-South who specializes in geographic medicine. Dr. Chi focuses on infectious diseases affecting the population. Be sure to tune in on Monday starting at 6:30 p.m. back to back for Let's Talk Memphis on Xfinity Cable Channel 17 and simultaneously on 1091.